Well, awesome. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to start up these recorders because I feel like we're just going to start having good conversations anyways, so we might as well start recording. Why not?
Well, you know what? They already missed the best content.
Like, probably. It's all downhill from here.
Now it's like, hello, Jack. Thank you for coming on the show. It's so nice to talk to you for the very first time. Yeah.
Now
Ryan, thank you so much, Spencer. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. Long-time listener, first time. We have done a podcast, Spence, but we did one of your solo projects.
Yeah, we did my other my one where it's like the one-on-one sort of comic interviews. Well, it's supposed to be more than comics. It ended up just being mostly comics.
Does Ryan know about those other podcasts, or is this sort of like
you have another podcast?
I know. Don't you dare.
I already wanted to get you on just because I liked Gunn. I gotta read on the next arc. But I have it sitting on Comixology. I just got to get down around the reading.
No, you don't, because Comixology did their switcheroo 2 weeks ago.
Did it kick you off?
My stuff is gone. Me and a lot of other people.
Well, you say
I think
this
this is Spence going straight to his page. Like, wait, what the fuck?
This is me going to. I was just like, well, the day I finish my comic, if that ever happens, I was like, well, I know somewhere I can post it. Now I'm like,
well, I guess the upside to me is that I already had it on Kindle, so I think mine converted over.
So here's the problem I'm facing.
I got your first cut. I got 1 through 3, and then the second arc, Man with the Blue Arm, Twist of Vertigo, and Werewolf Days.
Oh, they still have it then. Okay.
But awesome. I downloaded these from a long time ago, so I'm not sure if
they're downloaded in your.
Yeah.
Well, so there's been a long delay between the last issue and the one that every time I come on I say is coming out.
Hey Jack, before you go too much farther and before we get into all this podcast, I want to ask you, do you mind testing? Like, we've done that a couple times, but should we go live on Twitter? Do you want to do that, or you just want to do a straight podcast?
Oh yeah, no, let's do it live. Without a net, man.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to be throwing you up on there and be like, okay. But I know he's going to be good with it. But yeah, so I just want to do that because there's always that thing where it's like, if we keep going, we're going to have good stuff. But it's like, I want to make sure everything's booted up and ready to go. So I'm going to go live, and then we'll just do a little intro, and then we can just go free roaming from here, and then eventually we'll get into Gen 13. So you guys all ready?
Well, I think so. Do I?
Do I look ready?
Ready as well me.
Okay, I'm gonna click it because once I click it, that's it.
We're going back now.
Not to put the old man in Old Man Orange, but how do you view this on Twitter? Is this a?
It literally just pops up. It just pops up on my Twitter page right there. It goes through that way, and then there's you technically could do it on Facebook, and you could do it on Facebook's kind of weird.
Oh, I see.
Facebook, literally, me and my other buddy Wes, we were reviewing Mad Max 1, and I mentioned the scene that the guy gets raped, and the Facebook pulled it down because I mentioned that. I was like, you see the guy he's running me, you can see his butt cheeks are all worn out and everything. It's just oh, you don't see that in a normal movie. And then Facebook's like, whoa, we're done with that. And it was funny too because I remember when Wes first called, he's like, dude, Facebook pulled it down. I'm like, well, it's probably because the last 5 minutes of the episode you went on to tell how much you didn't like Facebook's platform and how it was the Walmart of social media. It's it has everything you need, but you just don't really want to be there.
There's that, and probably the rape talk didn't help either.
No.
It was air quotes the rape talk that got it off.
No, you know what? I do these live draws sometimes. Do you ever do that?
I've never tried it. I've done ones where I've just recorded me inking or drawing just on the computer and then posted up as a video or a time lapse later. But I've never done a live draw.
Well, that's the smart way to do it because you can kind of maybe edit out where you're because I find it distracting to talk to people. They'll ask questions and sort of interact with you, which is nice, but it's distracting because then you're not focused on what you're doing, and then I just stupid shit that I think people watching are like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. So it always stresses me out.
Get the real artist in here, not the letterer.
There's this guy who does these really short 30-second to minute-long cartoons. He's called Circle Tunes, and there's it's hardly animation. It'll be you could see he's on some kind of tablet, and he's just kind of moving the character around or moving their eyes around just with the stencil, or the pencil out of sight. And there's one time, hey guys, on the live stream. So today, I know hands be really hard to draw. So today we're gonna cover hands, and like goes in slow motion. Like, fuck, how do you draw hands? How do you draw it? The music gets all intense. So many people are watching me. Fuck, and then cuts like there's like just a reference he just dropped in there of like clipped in there. And there's how you do a perfectly functional hand. So I'm like a stick figure.
It's like
that is an excellent documentary. That is because that's the other thing is I think like you realize when other people are watching, but you don't realize when you're doing it how often you're just like, well, that's a fuck up, I'll fix it. That's a fuck up, I'll fix it. That's a fuck up, I'll fix it. But then like when you can see people seeing the fuck ups is when you start to go, oh fuck, they really don't know what I can cuss, right?
Yes, of course. Because we haven't gone live yet, to tell you the truth. Actually, you know what? I'm going live now. Boom, we're going. Boom, it's going live. This will be in the regular podcast, but we're going live right here, so that gives the double whammy. So boom.
Oh, I see the little. There we go.
See, now we are. So hello and welcome to Old Man Orange. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I'm Ryan Dunnigan, and today we have a special guest.
I'm Spencer Scott Holmes. Oh, fuck! Are we still live? Can we scrub that?
Saga.
Hold on, sorry. Okay, I'm Ryan Dunnigan, and this is the evening.
We should have just said the same name 3 times. Just think about that the first time.
Jack Foster. I think everybody did their screen names, which is so clever because then people can find you at the Villainous on Twitter and at Reckless Eyeballs on Instagram. Why not make them the same?
I don't know, but you know how it kind of goes and so on like that. But yeah, we were just talking some fun stuff, kind of pre-show stuff, talking about doing live draw videos and all that kind of stuff. And Jack was asking me if I've ever done them. And I've never done them live, always just done a video. I feel if people watch me doing it, you'd see a lot of Control Z because I hit that button more than I hit the actual like pen to plastic, I guess.
Same thing here.
Here's what I would recommend: do it like start with small, like this is a 5-minute one, and do it at 2:00 in the morning when you're like nobody's watching, or like one weirdo. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say weirdo. And then like
that's the best fan we got.
Then you get your confidence at it, and you can start doing it, and then you sort of like you build. Hold on, can we go back? So in the pre-show chatter, in the green room over donuts, Ryan, you were mentioning the comic that you are working on. What is your comic, dude? Oh,
it's been in the works for a long time, and it probably would have been done by now if I didn't just keep on, this is shit, restart, this is shit, restart, I've had probably 2 completed scripts for it by now, but basically it's essentially...
I have a 180-page script version of it, too.
Yeah, burn that one.
That's history right there.
Basically, it's a sci-fi Western, and I know that's by now everyone's got a sci-fi Western, but it's a sci-fi Western about like a ragtag team of mercenaries. And I guess the thing I'm trying to make it kind of stand out about it doesn't really try and draw too much attention to itself about it, but basically all the aliens and creatures in it are adjacent to things from lore. So the idea is if you see something that looks kind of like a bird or a birdman or whatever, like, oh, it's a Tengu. It's Mothman, or so So that's kind of those are creatures that populate the world, and it doesn't stop. It's not like episode or freak of the week, like what's a Mothman, But it's more like that's the things that populate the world. That's not really what it's about, but that's I guess somewhat of the twist. So
it's a sci-fi crypto western.
Kind of sci-fi crypto western with like mythology and whatnot too.
It's always great when you get to mint a new genre.
I don't want to. I really appreciate it. It's really nice of you to say, but at the same time, I don't want to say I created a new genre because there's that period back in like when emo and screamo was popular, when every other day someone was calling the new genre. We came up with mathcore. What's mathcore? Well, the thing is, you roll these dice, you make an equation, and based off the equation, you end up making like a guitar riff. Like that is fucking stupid, and that's not a new genre. You know what I mean? So it's that kind of thing.
That was the era you picked your name and you also chose your genre. You named your genre as well.
I gotta say, I was in a car ride with 2 friends who were going back and forth about what I think were real. I don't know if they were real or fucking with me, but they were like offshoots from sort of like New York punk and hardcore and like loudcore and grindcore and then they just kept going back and forth and like it just kept getting weirder and weirder and weirder. And then like one guy was like, like a ditch Barbie, like when a Barbie gets lost in the snow and then the snow melts and then she goes like rolling, sliding, like down the river in a ditch. That kind of, and I was like, is that Kim Gordon? What is that? I don't. What are you?
That's already a good name for a band, Ditch Barbie.
Yeah, like there's your punk rock name. Stop there. You're already
Before
made it.
G.G. Allen was solo, he was in Ditched Barbie.
But ever since then, maybe you guys could relate. Ever since then, I've been trying to recreate that conversation as like sort of like just like a B-roll 2-page, just like the same conversation in the car with 2 characters, and nothing can ever get to how cool the actual conversation was, because I think it was partially real, like like when you do know all those little subsets, and I tried to make up a few of my own, like it's a rabbit hole you could really like slide down if you are inclined.
Well, it's like one of those ones where it needs to be like captured almost right there on the moment, or else like the key details get kind of lost in the process. Like I notice that's kind of how it is when you have those amazing conversations, and then you go to write it the next day, and you're like, I remember like 3 parts of it, and now it doesn't sound nearly as good without like all the in between I already forgot about.
No, that's the magic. That's the magic, and that's when you want to like record everything, because you're like oh, I don't want to like you never know when the lightning is going to strike.
Sometimes you just have those conversations like at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, whether you be on substances or not, and they're like it goes to a certain level, and you're just like, I don't know if I'm in the right mind space to recreate that or even put that on paper.
But that's the stuff. That is
in the moment. It was the truth.
That's the stuff you want to get, because I feel like that's the stuff that's really indelible. Like, and that's what you're like. I feel like like I think like you write enough, like you get good enough, you can sort of do like the mundane stuff fine. But it's getting that stuff that's sort of like really like oh, it's like the Grand Royale speech from Pulp Fiction, where it's just like this is just elevated. This is just like the next level.
And all they're talking about is like cheeseburgers in another country, pretty much at the end of the day. But like, on paper, it's like that's what it is. But it's just such a magical thing. And Ryan, you bring up that late night conversation. That's something that almost is kind of like missed. I feel is like, because like you don't really get that a lot of times. It seems like nowadays where like you hang out with a buddy for so long that you're like spending the night, and you get to that weird state when you've like passed midnight, and now you're just really tired because you guys have been up like doing stuff all day long. But then sometimes that's almost where you get like some of the best ideas. And I still have many of the notes that like whenever they would, because we just pull out notes and you just start writing things down. And you're like, oh, this would make for a good material, or this would be like this, and you start getting that kind of like goofy. You're like 2 steps away from falling asleep, but you're now just like getting all these ideas going.
Here's you want to roll the dice here. This might get us booted off Twitter for a second.
Wait, is this mathcore?
Twitter's fine. It's Facebook's the one that likes to do the booting.
Okay. We mentioned this like a few years ago on the podcast, but I think it's been long enough we could say it again. In one of those sessions, we came up with a character called Rape Gorilla. And it was this character. The way that initially started, we were talking about the movie Love Potion number 9, and there was a part where the chimpanzee loses his shit and jumps out the cage. Like, that chimpanzee's fucking raping something somewhere. And like, well, thank God it's a chimpanzee and not a gorilla. And then from there, we just like, just...
Yeah, it was one of those late night watching TV. We're watching, a bunch of guys watching Love Potion number 9 together, and then thinking about like the monkey scene more than anything else. Like, dude, that was the takeaway from that one. And then I think we also pictured it later on, because then there was the trailer for like the first of like the new versions of Planet of the Apes, and there was that scene.
The monkey's sitting at the foot of the bed.
Yeah, where he's just standing at the foot of the bed in the trailer, because the movie hadn't come out yet. So the trailer, but like, we picture what if the rape gorilla was standing there at the edge of the bed, just like looking over the family, like breathing real hard.
Well, I mean, if we're honest, isn't that Gorilla Grodd? I mean, like, if we are honest, after he captures the Flash, he's like, now to assert my dominance. Like, I mean,
I could eat his brains, or
it's grape
I think
ape.
we've been overlooking the really menacing aspect of Gorilla Grodd for years.
I think CW really pussed out on like season 3 of Flash, not going full distance on that.
They need to bring Gorilla Grodd back into they need to put him into like a major movie. Like, that would be awesome. Hopefully, hopefully in the new Flash one they'll throw him in there. I know he's not going to be in there, I don't know. Maybe
no. I feel like that's the. Also, where do you guys stand? Gorilla versus grizzly bear. Who wins?
I like the idea.
Closest thing, Team Humans. I'm going Gorilla.
Yeah, I like the gorilla. I like going with that. I don't know if that's the realistic choice, but I like that going on that side. Kind of pro ape.
Yeah, hotly contested in my house because I am gorilla. Because gorillas are smart. Ultimately, like they don't like like grizzly bears are apex predators and they got big claws. So yeah, I get it, they're dangerous, but I think a gorilla is smart and they'll use tools, and that is how they'll sort of like like people, like ultimately like isn't that the whole Batman thing in general? Like I don't have superpowers, but I'm so clever it compensates. So it's the same thing.
So there's a grizzly bear have superpowers then.
Oh well,
I guess
what you didn't count on.
Does it have eagle wings? No. Yeah.
Does the polar bear dynamic change it?
Well, here's how. Because like first it gives you a Coke, and you're like, oh, this is a friendly polar bear, and then it smashes it.
See, speaking of late night stories, that's one of the other ones Ryan always has. Like he's like, those like polar bears, the Coca-Cola commercials, they always show them being friendly. It's like I just want to see them where it's like, oh, they think it's all friendly and so on, and it's just brutal massacre, just over and over and over, and then it just ends with like, boo doo doo Coca-Cola.
It was like, I actually had it storyboarded out. It was one of those many things we never got around to animating back when we used to animate, but it was basically a guy, you saw like the polar bears playing on the ice being all cute, and then off in the distance you see like an ice road trucker of like a Coca-Cola truck go by. They look up all happy, and, just happy, just cute smiles. You see the trucker just drive in, like looks at a picture of his family. All of a sudden the polar bears like, on the side of the window, the thing goes over, they pull a guy out, they're fucking eating his organs, he's screaming, and he's reaching for a picture of his family, just screaming, like abrupt cut, and then it just like the polar bears all like having like Coca-Colas or whatever. What could have been.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring this up. This will come up later because I feel like the assignment that we had, the show that we watched, there's a lot of stuff that I was like, should we get into it or shall I hold
let's do it. I'm ready. I'm there.
So the version that we watched of the Gen 13 animated movie had like a little Disney logo at the beginning. Now, was that a joke?
No, it's literally. So what this is I remember like a while back, me and Ryan were like, okay, we have the entire collection of the DCU animated stuff, and then I clicked on the Wikipedia thing, and then I was all like, well, what's this Gen 13 one that's sitting right here and so on? And then I started looking down the list here, and I was like, because, it's like, okay, that's cool. Here we go. We got the Jim Lee book with Jason Scott Campbell and Brandon Choi. Like, it just sounds like that's the most, like, super group guys you could possibly get together on, like, one thing. And technically, when the book came out, it was almost, like, very fresh because nobody really knew who these guys were other than Jim Lee, But I started looking at the thing, and, like, there's a movie made. But for some reason, it didn't come out in America. They just, like, put it out in Australia and so on, and it was a co-production of DC and Disney Animation, and I was like, that's such a bizarre like pair up that, but I want to see it and so on like that. And then so I read a little bit farther into it, and so what it was is Disney wanted to buy the rights to make a movie or an animated thing of Gen 13 from Jim Lee, and that was kind of in the works from like, I guess because they're putting together from 96 to when it came out in 98, and then I think it was kind of released in whatever Australia in like 2000 or something like that. But the only place that went Australia. But so they're putting it together there, and then but by the time that it finally kind of came out, because I think it came out like at a Comic-Con in Chicago in like 98, and then it came out, so I guess you could have technically saw it in the US for a moment, but that was it. And then when it came out, the DC deal to buy from Image or whatever, like the WildStorm and all that stuff kind of was going through, and it's like, we don't want a part of it and so on like that. But then when watching it, I'm like, no, I think this is like the most ballsy DC production I've ever seen. I feel that was why they said no. We let some animators go a little bit too ham on this.
So not to spoil, but like there's like, in addition to like generous amounts of like TNA and a lot of cussing, like they've got like people smoking,
like all the time.
Is not like smoking like a cigar, like a Nick Fury type, but like they like smoking, and I was like how did this happen? Like this feels like even then they were so like that's not our deal.
Yeah.
This makes the goth girl's archetype, like, her arc. Like, I need to find a place to smoke. That's the whole thing with her.
Yeah. Well, it's
no. I dug it. I totally dug it because it felt like it was like I felt like they were sort of like doing the job of bringing the comic to life. Because I felt like that was the genre that they were not genre. That's what they were trying to do with the book. But it was also like, wow, like you can't get people to say like did you guys see Eternals?
Yeah.
Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Eternals was the first time you ever saw two people like
in an MCU movie, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Not like in like, Daredevil. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. Because I feel like they are very like they take a huge step back from all that now, which is weird because it's weird to think of the past being more progressive. In the future.
Well, just the weird thing is it's if it's 1998, there's not really other shows that are even doing this, because this DC hasn't even done their kind of like when they started doing the straight to DVD movies and they started having like, oh, okay, and they kind of up the ante each time. This one's kind of a hard PG. This one's now PG-13, and then I mean even like the real intense ones didn't start coming in until like 2010ish era. This is still like coming out right around the same time that you'd be watching like the 4th season of Batman the Animated Series. Going into like Batman Beyond, Pokemon,
Correct me if I'm wrong. I read I did my due diligence. I read a Wikipedia page, so now I'm an expert. But it was the dude who did Mask of Phantasm.
Yeah, the director.
So like. Yeah, so it was like that was like correct me if I'm wrong, was like a movie, like they like it wasn't the direct to video stuff. It was
a theatrical film, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like and also maybe one of the best Batman stories.
I agree with you. Totally would
like that, yeah, totally. Sidebar. Sorry, not to derail. What do you guys think of the Batman? I know you guys already did an episode, but
I really liked it.
I liked it a lot too. There's all my complaints, if you call them that, are more of just preferences rather than actual like real legitimate criticisms. Like it was a little too grounded, but for what it was really good still. But even being as grounded as it was probably more accurate than most of the movies, live action movies, that is.
No, I really loved it. Although I feel like every time I see a Batman movie, I'm like, oh, I really love that.
I gotta do that too. I mean, for me, it was just more like, I wish Catwoman had a real mask at some point in the movie. I felt like they had the most half-assed, like, somebody had a beanie on in the background. They're like, hey, Bob, give us that beanie there. We're gonna cut it in half, make an eye hole, boom. Pop it up a little bit. She's got little cat ears, I guess, but she's got like a full other suit on. But you're not gonna give her like a mask or like goggles or anything.
So sorry, not to derail us. Back to Gen 13. And so had either of you boys seen this before?
Negative.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, so this is one of those ones that's
first
been on the
time I've
list.
seen it was today.
Yeah.
Well, can I back in the medieval times when you would go to your local comic book convention, sort of back when this was made, like there would always be that one booth. I don't know, this might be before you guys, let me know. There would be that one booth with all the sort of like bootleg VHSs, and
that's still there.
Yeah. I bought the loop on the third like live action movie the last time I saw.
And that was your place to get like now everybody has it, but like that was how you got the Star Wars Holiday Special. That was how you got this sort of, like all the bad TV versions, like the bad Captain America, the bad Fantastic Four, the bad before they hit the Marvel Universe. And like I felt like this felt like, because like the quality of the YouTube wasn't like super tight, and it had that sort of like copy of a copy feel that those old VHS tapes would have, which like I got like sort of like a nostalgia boner for, because like I was like I miss this. I miss sort of getting a VHS tape and sort of being like, wow, the quality on this is terrible, and like the tracking is awful, and you're really only watching it for bragging rights to say like I sat through Generation X.
Well, it's one of those ones that like when I first saw this thing come out, I wanted it for my collection to go there, so I looked on eBay right off the bat because I'm like, I'm gonna go find one right on there. And I don't think it ever came out on DVD, and it was only on VHS, and of course it's VHS in like Australia, so it was like $50+ used being sent over. And I was like, okay, one of these days I would like to kind of have it. But yeah, in watching that version, you could totally tell this was a copied VHS put up on the YouTube at like 320p, no bells and whistles there. Some parts like it's like when especially when there's that shower room scene, it's like I feel like it's steamy in there, but it also looks extra steamy because like the VHS slash YouTube quality at the same time. But in watching this movie and how much I actually kind of liked it, I really do kind of want to track down a copy because I feel it's going to make my DCU collection complete if I can slap that VHS right in there with it.
I think it was actually surprisingly great. Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, no, I was going to say I liked it. The one thing I was kind of wondering, though, is I'm assuming this was going to be made. I'm not saying this to be a dick or anything like that, but I feel like it was made to be like a straight-to-video movie just because it kind of had more of that kind of animation style. Like I felt like I was watching like an R-rated episode of The Mighty Ducks. Like The Mighty Ducks, like animated show from like late 90s, kind of had, or even Gargoyles kind of had that kind of vibe,
Yeah.
minus the gargoyles, you know. So
It made me think of like if you were gonna launch a Gen 13 X-Men animated series, like this would have been your 5-parter. You know, you would break it up into 5 parts, and then that would sort of like launch it, because it felt like the animation was about at that level. Like it's better than you might be expecting, but still not fully like like a movie at the time.
Yeah, well, it's definitely straight to video.
Yeah,
because a lot of the thing that I'm wondering about that is because a lot of those straight to video and DVD Disney movies were made to kind of pitch a show. So there was like the Buzz Lightyear solo movie was there to pitch a Buzz Lightyear solo show a few months later. Same thing with the second Aladdin. Same thing with whatever. And
Return of Jafar.
Exactly. And then this one kind of, I'm wondering like, well, if you were doing that, what show or what was this going to be? Just a series of movies? Because it does end on a cliffhanger. And I'm assuming, because there's a lot of things like, oh, so so-and-so's just dead? Like, no, he's probably going to come back in the sequel, if it ever happens. Or the show, or whatever. But I'm wondering, what show, what channel would they put this on? And what would they be doing to kind of, like, get, like, hey, kids, Gen 13, So.
Well, that's the weirdest thing about it, is because you're watching this, and it's like, at first I was like, oh, man, okay, it's kind of like it's like a PG-13. And from the looks of it, I was like, it's probably going to be like, it's probably going to be like maybe light PG. They're going to kind of, it's going to fit into the same block as like X-Men, Batman the Animated Series, all that kind of stuff. And that's not a bad thing, but that's literally what it looked like. I'm like, that's what they're going for. But as I'm watching it, it's like, no, it's like, it starts off right at the very beginning. They're like, there's like these parents run away with their kids, and they just literally get blown down just by a hail of bullets, blood shooting up and everything. Like, the one kid's holding his sister, just like, what's going on? Just like, and you're like, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like this is your start. This is Disney logo.
No.
Parents getting shot down.
You see the Disney logo, and then it proceeds like this is the first movie they've made since Bambi, because it has like this like harrowing. Your mother gets killed, like not just killed, like machine gunned down, like right in front of like these kids, and the dad who's like also dying in a longer, more protracted way. Run, kids, run! And instead of running, they're just standing there shivering. Like, wow, bold choice.
Yeah. Do you think Disney has any cards for like Happy Mother's Day or Happy Father's Day? Do you think they have any of that in the Hallmark?
No, because like all the parents are dead, right? Like either the dad is domineering or the mom is dead. Like the Bambi's mom.
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day.
But yeah, it's like
Bambi looking sad down in the tree.
Yeah.
At least you have a mother. Tell her you love her.
Yeah, at least you have a mother. But yeah, it's like, and then this just kind of goes on. It's like, and then it goes like, okay, no, it's a PG-13. But then you're kind of going on. You're like, oh, no, it's pretty much it's practically it's an R movie without actually saying fuck. But they do have a lot of like insinuated like fucks. Where like, there's one part where like I think it was Grunge. He's like frickin' A. You're like, well, we know what he's saying right there. Let's be honest. You can say frickin', but like in everybody's mind, it's already translated. It's sort of like in that new Guardians of the Galaxy game. They say flarkin' the whole time in it, but like. It literally just sounds like they're saying fuck like every other word, because that's like when you say flark this and flark that, it's like, dude, that's not even bleeping it out. That everybody knows what's going on. You just made like the most swear-filled game for a Guardians of the Galaxy.
I just want to say this regarding Grunge. I totally misread the scene. I'm like, what? Like, right, there's the part when they're in the air vents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the main girl, Halliday. What's the girl's name again?
Caitlin or
Caitlin Fairchild.
Fairchild.
And it was like some super waspy, like Caitlin Fairchild of the Fairchild estate, something like that. No, like when she was holding them up, and then they were all stacked on top of her, or the guy was like, he was sitting on them, says, "Oh guys, I got a big one coming." Like, you better tuck it in. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I thought he meant since he was sandwiched between two girls, he was hiding a fucking boner. That's what I initially thought. I'm like, oh, art joke. Oh,
well, he couldn't have hidden it because he wears underwear. He wears like tidy whities through the whole thing. Which I also want to say, like, as far as like the '90s are maybe more progressive than we recall. Like, I think like for like an Asian American character to be so like heavily sexualized is people don't give him credit for lighting the way for people, for Asian Americans to be viewed as sexual objects. Mm-hmm. Carrying the torch, right? Is that the phrase?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, you guys,
and also he was like the biggest guy. He was like the biggest, bulkiest guy in the movie too.
well, then he just has like literally like the most gnarliest sounding fart that just almost sounds like he was like 2 steps away from just shitting everywhere. After eating like literally going down to the cafeteria and eating like 15 like chili dogs, like he Sonic the Hedgehog or something.
In addition to that. Oh, sorry. The very first scene after the traumatic childhood is Caitlin's college roommate, like from the ass cam.
I really just wish that I wish this was like a promotional VHS that you would get like at a video store back in the day, where like every like 15 minutes they have like the little like ticker tape goes down at the bottom. They're like, hey, if you're enjoying this movie right now, believe me, you got to get it in your store right now. You want it. You got to have it. The customers would be lined up at the door. I wish like this thing every single like 10 minutes or so, whenever there was a scene like that, I just wish like a little Disney logo just popped up on the side almost just to let you know what you were watching once again, like animated by Disney.
You just hear ass.
The ass cam was one thing, but then when she flips around, like there were
there was like she had hard nipples, yeah.
And that was what I was like, that Disney, somebody tacked that on there. This is a joke, right? Like these guys
they did some shit in Lion King and Little Mermaid. Could have done with this too.
Well, that's just the biggest thing. Is it's just like I just don't know, because this is a weird term. Like the only thing that you could probably sell this up against is it's going with Heavy Metal 2000. Like that's the movie that this.
Oh
movie,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because everything else is like, because I mean the other feeling I got from it was like Titan AE, but if Titan AE was like an R-rated movie, because Titan AE always feels like it's heavy metal, but like brought to like a PG level. Like that's what always kind of gives me the vibe. But
hey, do you guys like Titan AE? I
love Titan AE.
Like a sort of like unrecognized gem. Like I feel like it does not get the credit for being like as fantastic a movie as it is. Sorry.
Yeah,
we did an episode on it like about like maybe 3 years back.
Like a good like couple hundred episodes ago.
Yeah. Oh, it wasn't that long ago, he said, looking at the setting sun.
Well, also on that sort of like on that tangent, have you guys ever seen Rock and Rule?
Yes,
yeah,
we did that one
about like a year ago.
All right. I gotta go.
See, this is the thing when you've done like 500 plus episodes. Also, you start to get to the point where you forget what ones you did. This is what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for me and Ryan to. We've done certain ones where we've reviewed it again. Like for episode 300, we did Dark Knight Rises again, because that was the very first episode we ever did, was when Dark Knight Rises came out. But I'm waiting for the point that we're going to do a movie again, and then we're like, oh, wait, we did that already.
You get halfway through it.
Total Recall with Colin Farrell. Let's see how it is now.
But not one of those ones like we didn't realize it though. Not like hey, we're coming back to it like 10 years later. Like no. Like we literally like spaced out that we ever did it.
I give it to episode 700.
Yeah.
Rock and Rule, another, and that sort of like I think like is like the age that I am, like people really cherished like heavy metal, which is also like really hard to find. Like he had to like catch it on TV at like on cable at 2:00 in the morning one day, and that was it. And like people loved it, which I don't want to dissent. I think it's fine. I think the animation maybe isn't as strong as people remember from being stoned. But I think when people are talking about heavy metal, they're like Rock and Rule is that movie. Like Rock and Rule is a movie where the animation is fucking fantastic. The music is like surprisingly like better than music in a movie like that should have been. Mm-hmm. And the story is like very metal.
Yeah, it's even got like the Mick Jagger villain and everything.
Oh my god, it is so fucking fantastic! Every time I watch it, I'm like, this is the best thing that. And also, like, I think it bankrupted the studio, and so we never got any more.
It did. They originally wanted Mick Jagger to voice that character. It's like, hey, we got a character that's really just fucking ripping you apart. It just really says you're like a has-been, you're a sellout. The Stones are kind of on hiatus right now. Do you feel up for coming out to this?
my favorite joke of the whole thing, and one that I constantly try to work in, but like after like he keeps so the story is Mock is this sort of like guy who's trying to raise a Cthulhu demon, and he does it through music and through these rock shows that he does. He almost gets it at one rock show and sort of like ends up like shorting out the power supply, and sort of half of the theater gets consumed. And they're doing sort of like a news clip, and they cut to these people selling merch, and they're like, man, no one's buying our I Survived the Mock concert t-shirts. Which is such a dumb joke, but it gets me every time.
It's
Sorry,
little things
back to
like
Gen
that.
13.
Well, actually, to link it to Gen 13 and Rock and Roll, I think they're kind of similar in some way, just because they both have this thing where there are things in it which are clearly aimed for like only an adult could watch this, but then at the same time, there's a few things in there like, well, only a kid would laugh at that. You know what I mean? So there is this kind of weird balancing act with both those movies.
Yeah,
and also like, sorry.
I was just agreeing. Just
we sort of like we locked in really early on the sort of sophomoric stuff, which is like, I mean, I think fun and enjoyable. But it's actually like it's a solid story. It's a great sort of getting the team together. It's a fantastic origin. Like if you're gonna, I mean, so many of these sort of origin stories are terrible, and I think this one is actually really tight. And like I think that sort of like that connective tissue to the Mask of Phantasm really shows, because like they I think two things are happening. I think one thing is that they are clearly trying to sort of like speak in the voice of the comic, you know. So they are sort of like it's a little irreverent, it's a little edgelordy, it's a little like we're running around with scissors, we're saying naughty words, but it's which is I think like what comics were trying to do in the 90s. You know, they were trying to sort of like assert themselves as sort of like, you know, like we are we're for grown-ups and punks. And so like they are doing a good job of speaking in the voice of the comic, and they're also like telling, like I think there's a reason why Gen 13 was one of the more successful of the WildStorm franchises or IPs or whatever you call them. Like it like the characters, like for as much as they sort of like the camera sort of lovingly goes over Caitlin's body, like she's not a bimbo, you know what I mean? She's you know,
ultra intelligent. She's you know, in a sense, it's like almost if you give like a kind of real nerdy girl like who's ultra intelligent already, but kind of shy and out there and doesn't really have a whole lot of friends. But like, what if you bestowed, like, in a sense, like sort of Wonder Woman powers onto her? Like, she just becomes instantly muscular, and she, you know, grows in like height and everything like that. Because that's kind of just the thing. And it is kind of like a cool idea. It's like, oh, okay, because you know, you'd almost look at like once again Grunge, you'd be like, that's the guy who's going to get the strength powers, right? He's going to be like the Incredible Hulk. And it's like, no. He gets to like, you know, change like his body type depending if he touches rock or steel or water or whatnot.
Water.
Like, yeah. So it has all those. And you know the weird thing too is in watching this, because like I have the Gen 13, like the original like graphic novel set. Let me, for all the viewers to see.
Looky there.
It pretty much follows.
Nice flex.
Yeah, it follows that one pretty darn well, like kind of accurately and so on. And I remember when I originally read it, I was like, well, because once again, I bought it because it just had Jason Scott Lee kind of artwork in there, and you got once again Jim Lee and Brandon Choi and all that kind of stuff. But it's one of those ones you kind of read it and you're like, well, this has got awesome artwork, but it kind of does feel like an X-Men knockoff at the end of the day. Like that's like the one thing when you're kind of reading it, it just feels like the guys all left Marvel just so they can, in a sense, still do Marvel, but they're in control, so there's a difference there. And I was like, yeah, I enjoy it, but you know, it didn't really stand out as much to me or so on. Where when I watched this, I felt like I kind of got it a little bit more. I'm like, I don't know, I almost like Gen 13 way more now because of watching this animated one than even like just like looking at like the cool artwork and just like the book and kind of going like, oh, that's cool, you know. And that, I think that's what made me really like enjoy this a lot.
100% agree on that. And also in the way that like I meet a lot of people now who like never really read, like when I talk to like younger people about Dark Phoenix, they never read the comic book. They only know it from the X-Men animated series. And I think this is one of those, like, I think this like would have made that translation where the animated version is kind of the perfect form, is where it should have landed. And I also agree with you. I think that like the WildStorm universe in particular did have that kind of like fan fiction-y feel to it. Like a lot of the characters, like I could never really lock in on like, who's that big block guy? Wait, who's the? Is that Grifter? Is that like it was? Because there was like a kind of a weird genericness. You know what it is?
Kind of a look of like, who's that guy that looks like Cable had a baby?
there was a cool thing. Like I thought that they all had really super cool superpowers, and I think like when you are in like Marvel and DC, like you have like these old like legacy characters who go way back, and like like the Beast is sort of super strong, and then Colossus comes along and he's super stronger, and like Angel could fly but in a limited way, and then Rogue could fly but in a less limited way, like and the powers were like little building off of each, and then like by about the 90s you get like all these like crazy powers, like I can take all the ambient oxygen in a room and turn it into heat, or like just bizarre wonky stuff, which was fun, but it turns into like Captain Crunch all berries, where it's sort of like all the fun, but you need some little Captain Crunch nuggets of plot and characterization to sustain the breakfast. Like if it's all berries, you just go into a sugar coma and fall out. And I think that was sort of like the part of the mix that they didn't totally get in WildStorm, or
just like Image and because a lot of times I feel like that proto-Image kind of era is one of those ones. It's where a bunch of artists a lot of times get together and start making really cool artwork and so on. But like there's like the grounded sometimes storytelling sometimes isn't always there. It's like you got the books, they look amazing and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes the stuff feels like a little bit.
Isn't that Spawn? And not to to borrow a word from the kids, but like isn't Spawn really just a vibe? Like it's just a lot of like shadowy urban streets and sort of demon looking things, and then like over the course of they're like 500 issues, like what really as the needle of the plot moves
he misses his wife and likes killing people.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not a slam. I think that that's not slamming it. It's just sort of like it's like David Lynch. It's more vibe and mood than content or story.
Well, like going off what you guys were saying about Image and WildStorm and all that, like I kind of like watching this kind of made me. I mean, I wasn't in love with the movie. I enjoyed the movie. I liked it, but it was also one of those things like it kind of did its job because because the thing about a lot of that early Image stuff, it's like what you guys said. It's kind of like X-Men, but not really X-Men. It all kind of has that splash page upon splash page. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where the character design looks cool, but there's got to be more substance. But now that I've kind of got a glimpse of which Gen 13 is, and I know it's more or less knockoff X-Men, or one of the many knockoff X-Men's of that time, I am kind of curious to check out more of the series, just knowing, okay, it's Jim Lee, it's Jason Scott Campbell, and, so it's, there's just something about that time where even though I didn't start reading comics until 2005, but I mean, frequently. I mean, I might buy a random Sonic the Hedgehog comic when I was in elementary school or something. But which funny, I still read those. I read the new ones on IDW now too. So about that.
Are you stoked about the new movie?
Stoked.
Definitely. We're doing
movie of the. I just keep saying movie of the year.
It's basically between that and Batman were the two movies I was looking forward to most this year. So now halfway, I don't know. I'm like, okay, Jurassic Park Domination. It's not Jurassic Park 1, but I'll check it out. Cool.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's not Sonic 2. It doesn't have Idris Elba voicing Knuckles, so we'll find out. But there's something about that whole look, that 90s kind of look where I just I didn't read comics at that time, but I remember walking through comic book stores and just being like, wow, I don't even know where to jump in. This all looks really cool, but I don't know where to jump in at. And now just kind of I'm getting nostalgic for it now. Now I read comics. I've been retroactively going back and reading a bunch of 90s X-Men and Cable and all that. And it's just this kind of, it doesn't fill that hole entirely, but it fills it a little bit. So I just kind of want to, now I'm a little bit more curious about Gen 13 for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I say the moment when it really is just kind of late in the movie, and I guess a spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiled for a movie that never came out 10 years ago.
It's like almost 25.
Okay. Sorry, I live in a bubble where everything is only 5 years ago. But when they reveal the Threshold is the trembling little boy we see in the beginning, I didn't know that part of the lore. So I was totally stunned in the moment. I was like, what a revel-. And then I cared, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, holy shit, you can't, that's your sister. And because they've been sort of setting him up as the villain. The first half of the movie, you're sort of oh, watch this guy. And then the other, I can't remember the name of the girl in the sort of the black evening dress.
The villain, the villainess.
Yeah. Who was also the only scenes that I thought looked like the Batman animated series were the ones with whenever she would, they would sort of go into the compound and she'd just be standing there in her sort of it's not Catwoman, but it has that sort of like I'm a sexy Batman villainess dress that she's wearing.
Oh, yeah.
She's always smoking.
Yeah, but the reveal on that, I was really like that was a great reveal. I was totally in the moment on it, and like I was like, oh wow, you know what, this show worked on me. I totally got pulled in.
Yeah, and it's Mark Hamill doing it too, just to top off that guy too.
Do we want to talk about who the voices are?
But we could always mention some of the voices because there's some really interesting ones in there that I didn't know
Yes.
until I was watching the credits. I was like, oh, whoa,
Flea was Grunge, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Flea of the Red Hot Chili Peppers was Grunge. And then there's one there's a dude, the Q, if you are a Star Trek nerd, was the good mentor.
Yeah. The guy with the missing the eye and everything.
Yeah. With this,
One of the two guys missing an eye.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
He had the 3 scratches plus. He had the whatchamacallit?
He was playing a little too hard with his like house cat.
Got Nick Fury. That was probably one of my favorite characters. I wish he was in it a little bit more.
Yeah, they could have swapped him out with Nurse Helga, the sort of German lady with the like. I feel like we've seen that character design a lot, and she didn't. I felt like less of her, more of the other dude.
She's just like straight out Young Frankenstein.
Totally.
I did appreciate how she was like, I love my creatures, but I must kill them. It's for the higher purpose. There is something about her. She's like, I don't want to do it, but I must. So there's that thing. Like, yeah, she's still an evil bitch, but
she has a 2-minute like a little regret before she's like, but I must kill.
It's for the fatherland. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Yeah. Well, then you also got Grunge going through her lungs, like, hey, dude, check out these panties I found. It's like, oh, it's Nurse Helga. It's like, no.
No, I thought we were talking earlier about Caitlin, I think, being sort of like a more reasonably developed character, but I don't think they stopped there. I thought all the characters, not all of them, but I think most of them. I think the main trio. I think Grunge. He's not got a lot of depth, but I think he's sort of like he's fun and likable in the way that never kind of came off the page in the comic.
Yeah.
And maybe half of that is Flea or the energy that he brings, but he's totally like you get him. He's a little like he's a man child. He's a little juvenile. And that sort of juvenile energy is like refreshing. And then I really love Roxy. I thought Roxy was like, I thought she had she had depth. Like I thought that they didn't keep them flat. They really did. So someone in there, the writer somewhere is doing the work. They're taking the characters, they're sort of keeping them in universe, but still sort of making a strong story that stands on its own.
We don't got to IMDb this or anything, but was Roxy the lady who voiced Buttercup from Powerpuff Girls? That voice sounded very familiar.
It's not Buttercup, because Buttercup's the lady who sings on the Scarface soundtrack.
I learn something every day.
TIL.
Because that's what I always think when I learned that. I was like, oh whoa, Buttercup and like I'm Hot Tonight kind of songs, or Scarface soundtrack, or Grand Theft Auto 3, just depending on which one you want to go with. But
well, I don't know. Do you guys like horror movies?
Yes.
Do you guys like old horror movies? Have you guys seen Carrie?
Of course.
Carrie, I guess is
a long time ago. Yeah.
So remember Carrie, the one lady who's nice to her, the sort of like the gym coach who's like a ball buster with all the other girls and like is really nice to her. If you've ever heard the one very, very famous song from Cats, I think it's Memories. She is the lady Coach Desjardins from Carrie is the lady who sings. If you're listening to Cats on the Broadway station, that is the same lady. And I was like, wow, that's unbelievable.
Is it the Cats version that like there was that the one that they had taped from Broadway that I remember they used to show like in school back in the day? Okay, it's that one.
Yeah, from from way back, our grandparents would have listened to.
Yeah, but
I never. Sorry, go ahead, Spencer.
Oh, I was just gonna say that was the version that I remember when you showed that to a bunch of '90s kids. Like, it's just not gonna go well. Like,
on that note, I've never watched Cats, and I'll be 100% honest, I don't intend to. But at the same time, I got parts of it because I was in a lot of school. Like I'm like sitting there all judgmental, like these fucking drama kids. I was in a lot of school plays in high school. But I wasn't one of them. I wasn't one of them. But there was like this hive mind thing, though. Like they all knew all these references, and one of them just starts singing like "Memory all alone in the moonlight" from the other side of the class. I just like in the crossfire. I gotta.
No, that's like I think they creep in. Like, although for me, I don't know if you guys are the same thing. I grew up in Florida, and then we had like a TV, like one of the TV channels from, like if you had like not cable, but like you would get the sort
UHF.
You'd get like a Chicago station, and we'd get like a New York station, and the New York station would always have like 588. 2800 Empire and Carvel ice cream ads. We'd also get the Carvel. We didn't have any Carvel.
Well, you got like WGN probably
this
if you
is
get
Jim
Chicago.
Carvel with the ice cream. Those ads.
Look, it's Fudgy the Whale. It's Cookie O'Puss here for your Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I love the Patton Oswalt bit about those. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
But I bet you it was WGN because that for some reason that channel got broadcasted like all over like the U.S. and it was like Chicago's local station. I don't know why. Like I never got. I didn't get Seattle's local station or any of those ones. Like,
but they would show like commercials for cats. So I remember the sort of like cats commercial, like as a kid, like when you're watching just sort of like daytime TV, and I would be like, what? And even as a kid, I was like, I'm cringing inside for all of you.
That's how I felt like when I remember watching that like in band class and they're like playing on. He was just like it had that thing like, whoa, teacher, what are we watching here? Like I don't want you to get arrested now. like we're like 9 years old in here. Did the door just lock or is that just me?
One of my favorite lines. There's that show Hell of a Boss. And like, there's the character Moxie who just loves musicals. They take a bunch of truth serum. And he says like, "I'll be honest with you, you have shitty taste in music. Like, you told me you love that play. I told you to check out. I walked out halfway through, Mox. It was about ugly, horny cats."
Although I think there is sort of like a new category of mocking cats that is a lot of fun. Like, I think you guys like Paul F. Tompkins, right? Because he is always sort of like, I think like was a joke of his that his ringtone was like Jellicle Cats or something. So I think like
Tompkins again. I know the
name sounds so familiar.
Oh, he's I don't know what he was never really on a show. He was if you watched BoJack Horseman, he was Mr. Peanut Butter.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
And then he's on like all the the comedy podcasts. I think he's sort of like the hardest working man in comedy podcasts.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. Okay. Because I love BoJack Horseman, so it's good to know.
Oh, wasn't BoJack Horseman great? I'm missing it.
Fantastic.
I mean, I think they ended when they should have ended, but like I feel like nothing has come along that has sort of hit that particular.
It's still going on. Like, oh, he's back in rehab. Okay.
There's only so much you can fuck up your life before it's like like you lose the audience.
Mm-hmm. But what were you saying with that guy?
Oh no, he just he has like this like he makes fun of cats, but in a way that is sort of like deeply like he knows like he knows all the references to make like the rum tum Tigger and jumble. I don't care. Oh,
well, that's the thing is like I feel like you got to know the cats well to really have the good jokes with that, and you know what
exactly, I mean? Exactly. And I feel like Cats has reached this level where there has to you have to actually get
form to it.
You have to get deep into it to be able to mock it properly.
You have to infiltrate within to learn their ways, just to tear it down from the inside.
What is a Jellicle Cat? Well, son, that is the entire show.
Let's light some candles. Sit down.
Well, I don't know. It just reminds me of the '90s attitude towards like cats and things like that. But even just like because the Gen 13 really has like the biggest pack of like '90s like whoa kind of characters. Like that's the thing that almost takes me back. And when I was watching this, it's that kind of cool thing where like you see something like this and you go, man, I wish I would have saw this when it first came out because I would have loved the living daylights out of it. But then at the same time, you're like seeing it like 25 years later. I almost like it just as much because what it does is it provides that time travel trip. I can take take to pretty much back to the 90s and get that same old feeling. It's kind of the same thing when I discovered like cartoons and so on, that like I must have just never had this channel because I never saw this show, and you see it and it's just like, it's almost like you got a brand new show to see, but from, the 90s or 80s or whatever like that you missed out on, and that always makes it so cool. And that's what sort of makes it here, because these characters are just as 90s kids as you can possibly get. I think that's what makes it so much fun.
It does. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, after you ran.
Well, it does actually kind of have just the main. Threshold. I'm assuming in the comics he eventually becomes a member of the team. I'm just guessing, but just even the main trio though, because you have just the every girl with Caitlyn, you have the whoa dude with Grunge, and then you have the quasi Valley / goth girl at the same time with Roxy. And then there's whatever other characters that come into the comics. So it is kind of like the whole trifecta of the 90s stereotypes. Right.
Well, because there's literally two other main characters that at least I kind of remember from the book, that it's like they picked three. I think they're sort of in there, but they're the kind that they're there for a split second when they go to the research facility, and then next thing you know, at the very end, they're like, okay, cryo freeze the other two. I want to say that those are sort of them, but because granted, as the series goes on, I know that there's more stuff that kind of happens, but I want to say there's technically, I want to say 5, and then they boiled it down to the main 3.
Which might have been a wise choice, because I thought 5 would have felt a little overcrowded for the. But the thing that you're saying about it sort of being this sort of tunnel back to night, I completely agree, and I also it's fun to be able to sort of because I feel when you have interest, you sort of you read all the stuff you wanted to read in the 90s, so it's hard to find anything it's hard to excavate and find stuff, and then I think in particular. If you're watching like we were talking about Batman, certainly Batman the heyday of Batman animation is in the 90s, but it doesn't feel of that time. It feels like it's more of a throwback to earlier stuff and references noir. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think Gen 13 specifically, more even than the rest of the WildStorm stuff, feels like it is a product of the time, speaking directly because didn't Grunge wear a flannel shirt?
Yeah,
I mean his name is Grunge. You know what I mean? It's so
his good name.
He was wearing a shirt. Yeah.
It's so it is commenting on the time in real time while it's being made, and sort of so to get that sort of it's like a double shot of that particular I'm not super nostalgic for that that period. I think I mean I am, but the image stuff, I was less engaged with the more Stray Bullets came out, and Scud the Disposable Assassin, and all this really cool stuff was coming up from the indie channel, but still it was just I feel it was just this period of accelerated growth, and the big two were kind of a little stagnant at the time. Mm-hmm. So they aren't really leading the pack. It's the storylines that people don't like the clone, and Heroes Reborn. Are they here? Are they in the universe? Are they not in the universe? Whereas just to go back to that is a lot of fun, and like you said, it's this kind of perfectly preserved artifact. Mm-hmm. Because it again, it has that feel of a VHS type that you would have gotten, at a comic convention when they had them in hotel ballrooms instead of convention centers.
I think it's also kind of to kind of go off what you just said, Jack. It's kind of shit. What was the example I was just gonna make? I just had it a second ago.
I was thinking about it.
It was too much time has passed. Fucked it. All right.
Okay.
It'll come back to me later, probably.
It'll eventually kind of come back at you. But there is that kind of thing. I'll even say this, this sometimes happens too. When you see some stuff that's when it's the of the time stuff, because sometimes Marvel has always been kind of they can be kind of funky about that, where you'll read a comic and it's just God, are they just trying to hit it on the nose that it's 2003 or 2011 or whatever they choose, whichever issue you're kind of reading. But it sounds kind of weird that sometimes that stuff that you would balk at at the moment, in 20 years from now, I almost would say it's kind of stupid, but you kind of read it and it almost puts a smile on your face later in life.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
That was actually close to the thing I was going to say. I was going to say there are sometimes it takes 10 years later, you're oh my fucking God. But then when it's 20 or 25 years later, you're I remember that, and it just kind of hits that little dopamine thing. But going off a bad example, I think there's times where it's a little too on the nose, and there's one situation where I remember it was Ultimates when Mark Miller was working on the Ultimates, and this is seriously, he's a fantastic writer, but this was like, what the fuck, dude? It was like, because Ultimates was like, we're gonna make the Avengers, we're gonna do it like all gritty and dark, and they're all fucked up, and they all got personal problems and all this and that. And then they're saying, we just got a movie deal. They're gonna make a movie about us. And they're talking about what actors will play. I'm like, of the time, okay, whatever. Funny enough, Nick Fury says Samuel Jackson, of course. Like, haha, okay. and then
it'd be funnier if it was old Nick Fury that said it. Just that.
Hasselhoff Fury, yeah.
Yeah.
And then like, that's where like Ant-Man or whoever says like, well, who's gonna play Bruce Banner? Like, oh, I know, that mouse from the Stuart Little movie. I'm like, dude, you just put like not a year, but a month on that thing.
But that's the one where it's like, for many a years, that line was like stupider than it all can be. I feel like if I read that right now, it would make me chuckle in other ways. I'd be like, oh, that's so funny and so stupid all at the same time, you know? Because mostly what always bothers me about that stuff is sometimes when they do that, like when they try to. When I'm reading a Marvel comic, or DC does it rarely, but sometimes they try to copy Marvel at some point. It's like, no, don't do that. But when they do those things where they do like those like fourth wall breaking moments where they try to relate to your world, I kind of don't really always like that because it's like, to me, it's like, no, I came here to get away from the world. I don't want you to remind me of like the regular world. I'm here to see your guys' world, But
I think that's the thing that they always forget. Is that like escapism is like like where there's a it's varying degrees. Like I think when you're a teenager there are certain pressure, like escapism is a different kind of like rocket ship, and then like as an adult escapism is a separate kind of rocket ship. But like I don't want to like this is like my thing with Hickman, which not to, if anybody I like him too, but like I really don't want to come to comics for the big bummer. Like like his run on Avengers I felt like was great, but also like, hey, big moral quandaries, and are the good guys actually the bad guys? Is America really the worst?
Yeah.
Like certainly valid questions, and I think like like things that you're really grappling with in your actual life, and like the release valve of escapism is that like it's not that you completely avoid these things, you engage with them on a daily basis, like during the Trump years. Mm-hmm. But you also want a space where that isn't infecting. You know what I mean? You want a space where it's like, hey, you don't have to talk about this particular thing in that way. And that is the thing that I think comics sometimes like they really like. I don't want to see 9/11 in comics. You know what I mean? Which isn't to say that I don't want to. It doesn't happen.
I don't want to see Doctor Doom for some reason standing up like. I'm like, yeah,
Doctor
right.
Doom and Magneto, like shit. It was that easy, huh? Fuck.
What have we been doing wrong our whole life? Well, because that's
Magneto leveled New York with a tidal wave. You think he's going to give a shit about two buildings?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just like school. Sometimes when they do that, I know what they're doing, but it's almost like it's breaking down the world. It's sort of like also like they'll do some things with certain characters where like it'll be a superhero character. And they got all these great powers, and they can do all these great things, and then they try to make him like, oh, but he just wants to sit down and play video games. Like, no, he doesn't. He has superpowers. Let's be honest. If he has superpowers and all this kind of stuff, he's equivalent of that kid that would tell you in like elementary school, be like, boy, if I had an X-wing, I would fly it to school every day. I'm like, if I had an X-wing, maybe I'd do a flyby, drop some bombs on you, and then I'm going to space and never coming back.
No, that's the asshole who's like, well, if I win the lottery, I'm still going to show up for work.
Yeah, exactly. It's that guy. Like he literally has nothing better to do.
And I hope you never win it, dude. What a waste that would be.
It's one of those things.
There's apparently, I didn't read it, and I didn't even see any stuff for it, but I overheard, and maybe they didn't go through with it, but apparently they're going to try and do some kind of story about how coronavirus has infected the Marvel universe.
No, man. And I look, so like, there's a right way and a wrong way.
Okay, and like just.
Sorry, we're a little.
When you have like a cube that can. Oh, delay.
I'm sorry.
We're back.
No,
it's because Ryan's trying to bring it up. Marvel's like, Ryan Dunnigan's talking shit on our new storyline.
No, I mean, there's a right and a wrong way to do everything. So if you want to try, go ahead. But here's the thing. Like, I think the X-Men spoke about like like civil rights movement, and it spoke about the gay experience, and it spoke about all these sort of like things that are going on in the real world in a very artful way, in a way that if you kind of want to like, I would rather go and try to explain like like gay alienation by explaining it by using Angel flying over San Francisco as a metaphor, because it's such a better metaphor than the actual in the real world way that it gets talked about. So that's what you guys do well. So like don't do the coronavirus. Find some other reason, why like Thanos snaps and everybody has to stay in their house for a year. Like make it a comic.
And then Thanos is going to have his own like variety show. He's like, this is what I got him here for.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into my live stream. We're all waiting this out, even here on whatever planet he's from. Titan.
Even Thanos is podcasting. We've officially reached peak
Thanos
podcast.
is like, I always wanted to be the host of Wheel of Fortune.
Thanos would probably start off as like one of those like very, very like kind of like, oh, he's fairly left leaning, but he's very, very anti SJW. But then he leans too hard the SJW things. Like, well, this is what gets me the clicks. So here comes these fucking liberal cucks again, trying to tell us.
Yeah, he's a Glenn Beck.
Yeah. He's gonna be fighting J. Jonah Jameson for podcast airspace. But yeah, it's like I feel like X-Men always did it in a way like that. Like you almost, if you weren't thinking too hard about an X-Men thing, you could be like, you wouldn't really even notice that it's trying to like tell you some like kind of like civil stuff in the background in a sense, and it's there. It's like if you think about it, but you could also just be watching it for like just an action-packed, or reading it for like just an action-packed story of here's these cool mutant characters running around saving the world and so on like that. Nobody seems to like it no matter what they do.
Yeah, I would argue you have to get that part right first. Mm-hmm. Like if you get that part right, if you can sort of like, if the vehicle works, then you can sort of like, then the sweet spot is you are able to sort of like talk about a lot of other things, for example, like I myself am a gay man, but my character Trevor is not. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes I'll have conversations with people who will sort of say things, like, oh, why didn't you make him gay? Or, do you feel like then you can't speak about the experience? And I feel like, no, I do get to talk about, what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. I think like when Trevor puts on his costume, when Trevor sort of like, wears a cape or wears a towel around his neck like a cape for the first time and is like, this feels right. This feels like me. This feels authentic. Like that is what it's like when like the first time you sort of like go into a gay space and you're like, mm-hmm. oh, this feels right. The needle is landing in the right direction. So like you're talking about things that are deeply authentic and feel correct, but you don't have to be so literal, as to make it, and I think like, all of it is unsustainable if the comic part doesn't work. If it's not mm-hmm. a fun and interesting comic, then like who cares, if it's a great allegory or anything else. Like, but if it is a fun comic and the comic essentials work, mm-hmm. and then on top of that, you can sort of like work in anything, that ties into the real world. And also, I defy you, try not to. You know what I mean? Because like that stuff creeps in whether you want to or not. Mm-hmm. like you were saying. COVID, even if nobody's discussing like like a 2-year pandemic, people are definitely going to talk about what it's like to feel like very alienated and like the need for like to connect with people. Like that stuff is like is it's impossible to kind of like screen that out.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's just for me. It's just I just don't like when things get like that. I feel like I call it the shoehorned in there, where they just want to like push it in on you, and you're just like, dude, I get it. Like, and then what I always say, it's like when it comes to certain characters, it's like just make the character a character. You don't have to like have like neon signs flashing behind him, letting you know what kind of character it is or what's going on here. Like, just make it a character. Like that's it, and just. Don't worry about it. Like you see it. I'll say this because sometimes you see some of those indie comics where people like they use it as their selling point, and sometimes I always feel like that's almost like a ploy. Like I'm like, oh, like you got a special ed superhero here because you're just trying to. I hate to sort of say it. Like I feel like I know that maybe they're just trying to do something kind of good, but when I see that, I go, you're utilizing that as your sales tactic, and it almost feels like how about you just have the character in there, and that's not what you're selling. You're trying to sell a good story. And then, by the way, you'll just kind of learn what the story's about as you kind of get into it. Instead of starting your sales pitch is like, I'm doing this, which just sounds like you're trying to reach for an audience.
Well, I think all along, like I worked in comics. I worked in comics in the 90s. like in a comic shop, I should say. I worked selling comics, so like I've watched the industry for a while, and like different things are like there are different ways to market in different times, and like during the last sort of like I would say the last 5 or maybe even 10 years, like that like identity is a part of marketing, you know. And like again, like if when I started working on Gun, like I didn't want to make the villain. I wanted to tell a story about villains, and that was the goal. And I thought if I made him gay, like everyone's going to be distracted. It'll steal all the oxygen. Like, what's this gay guy story like, rather than what is a villain story like? And now, you know, like it's a liability that he's not gay. Because that, you know, like that, you know, that is a very like it's a very marketable and sellable thing. And so, like right now, like it is okay to say, like, hey, it's great that you, whatever your experience is or whatever representation you feel you don't see in the world you are creating, that is great. That is like a great way to, you're speaking your authentic story, and that is fine. But do not neglect that is also a very marketable, you know, like it is both. You can tell your authentic story, which is, I'm glad that there's more opportunity for that. But it's to pretend that it isn't also like a marketable, and it's okay to engage in both. I think like the thing that you're saying, because this was my thing with watching Gen 13. Like, like if it was just a bunch of TNA shots and just a bunch of dirty words and just a bunch of like these guys doing like, look at these guys that I can't imagine. I'm watching a cartoon where people are, you know, smoking blow. What kind of boy am I a square? Snorting blow.
The dead kids are they're out there smoking the blow.
Goofballs.
Here comes the undercover narcotics agent. Hello, fellow teenagers. Are you smoking the marijuana cigarettes now?
I heard these kids were out there like shooting up cue balls.
If they were just doing that, then it's not fun. You know what I mean? Then it's just sort of like your gimmick is that. But underneath that, the story's strong. You know, the characters are developed. You know, like it's a skin that they wear, but the story, the architecture of the story is there, and that is the sort of like that's the you can never, if it's just the gimmick, it's always gonna like. Did you ever see? Which episode did you guys do on was it the Furbles? Meet the Furbles?
You know, I haven't seen that. Is that the Peter Jackson puppet movie?
Peter Jackson puppet movie.
I've never seen it, but I mean to.
Oh well, hey, you know what? When you start running low on ideas,
Meet the Furbles on the list.
All right, I'll say this: I love Peter Jackson. I don't think it's a good movie. It's sort of like what if the Muppet Show was SNL? You know, like in the early years. What if it was like they're all on a bunch of drugs and like, you know, like deviants in a lot of ways, which is fine. And but like the gimmick of, oh, you're seeing these Muppets, you know, you're seeing these Muppets do cocaine, and isn't that crazy? Which is like, yeah, it is crazy, but it's also like, well, if that's all you have is the sort of shock and the story underneath isn't good, then it's going to collapse.
If you don't,
and that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, you need that core substance of a good story, and that's why I think and I feel that when I see those, there's what I said. I hate to say it because like you'll see sometimes these indie comics where people they're pushing so hard on like whatever their agenda sort of is. But I sometimes makes me wonder, it's like, have you sort of lost touch of like just writing a good story and just kind of getting that? Like, I remember I saw there was one where this lady was telling me, it's like, oh, I have this book. It's about like, you know, there's the first female like doing it like an environmentalist and kind of like an eco-terrorist and so on like this. And as she kind of goes through, I'm like, what? You mean kind of like Captain Planet? And then she looks at me, she's like, no, nothing like Captain. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with Captain Planet. He's doing all the good things. I've been looking up to Captain Planet since the 80s. Come on, like, what are you talking about? Like, and then once you did that, I was like, well, I don't want your book. Then you put down Captain Planet. I don't know if I can trust you now. I was like,
just walk away. The power is yours. Put the book back down.
You want to know where your sale was lost? But it felt like she was hitting it so hard on there and so on like that. Maybe it is a good book. I mean, as I said, I was lost after the Captain Planet comment, so it goes to show how far you can push my buttons. But it felt like one of those ones where I couldn't tell you what the story was about because I didn't hear anything but what all the things that she put her name on and, you know, all this kind of stuff.
You know, well, here's the thing. Like this, as a general rule, I feel like if the story is good, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you know what you're doing, you never have to lean, like, you can always just lean directly on that. I feel like sometimes when people are insecure for one reason or another about the story or their particular talent that they're putting into it, that's when, like, a lot of other things, like, start they start leaning on a lot of other stuff to buttress up, like oh, it's this or it's that or it's and that is sort of like I think this show. Say again.
I was gonna. Sorry, cut you off. I was just like, I thought you were gonna go a certain direction. It was like New Warriors that failed Marvel.
Oh god, I was like that trailer felt like it was a spoof.
I didn't mean to derail us. Sorry, I thought that's where you're going.
No. Well, it's so hard to like. With the best of intentions, it's so hard to make anything good anyway. You know what I mean? So like, I kind of like a wide swath of like, hey man, it's it's hard to get a good first issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's doubly as hard to then have a second issue that's as good. like it is really, 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 really hard. And like I think the show kind of indicates how well like even this the Gen 13 like the movie, it's hard to with all the resources available, it's hard to make something like click and so with that understanding, like I get why people are sometimes like I understand why you want a lot of you want a lot of support structure around your project, because it's something, it needs it. But I think again, like that's just go down to the fundamentals, like just work hard to make the story solid, and if the story is solid, like people will always see that through all the other noise.
Just to make a little comparison, not to drag it out longer, but just a little comparison, just to fall around the New Warriors example. Like for instance, that felt like something that was very much, without trying to be all like oh fucking SJW bullshit, whatever. It felt very like agenda first, story secondary. And that's something, I'll be honest, I never read the book, but I heard nothing good about it. And then Midnighter, which is a book I haven't read, but I've heard nothing but good things about. That's a story about a gay superhero, and it was also a very beloved book that got a lot of great recognition, and a lot of people really liked it. So it is kind of one of those cases, like, people can't use that go woke, go broke type shit. It is just a matter of like, well, did you write a good story? It's ultimately what it comes down to,
At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is just having a solid story. And even besides a solid story, I mean, like the Gen 13 movie, this is one of those ones, like, goes to show you have your kind of one film that comes out. Now, granted, nobody gave this really a chance. They sent it to Australia to, literally to feed it to like the hyenas almost down. And it's just like,
a dingo ate my movie.
Yeah, if they're down there and in Australia, and if it sells really good, maybe we'll bring it to America. But I think Disney was like, no, this ain't coming to America. We have our reputation on the line. We saw what you guys did. Like, we don't make, because this is still proto, like when Pirates of the Caribbean 1 came out, Disney was almost scared to put their name on that, because you look at the movie poster to the original one, and it's like Pirates of the Caribbean. You see all this stuff, and then it's like the very bottom, it's like Walt Disney Pictures. And then the second, because I remember Dunnigan would just say this really well, is the second that Pirates of the Caribbean 2 comes out, it's like they just put Disney on every single square inch of that poster. So you're seeing Pirates of the Caribbean 2, it's like, Disney movie, Disney, isn't Disney awesome? Disney, like, but they were so, you could tell how scared they were when that first one came out. They're like, I don't know, it's PG-13, it's a little dark, it's got pirates in it, there's skeletons, that's kind of scary, like.
The thing that's depressing is I think they've gotten worse. Like, I think that they've, like, I feel like there's a hard list of things you can't do in a Marvel movie now, because they're in this sort of DC umbrella. Like, you can't do, is that Conan? Is Conan still in
the Barbarian?
I think it kind of goes back and forth. I think they have rights to him for a couple of arcs, because he's a member of the Avengers for a second. It was him and Punisher and Elektra on the Avengers. Like, all right, I'll check that.
The floor recognizes Conan. Slay.
Like Crom's blood.
Well, because Conan every once in a while gets, there's Marvel Comics will just kind of produce like a run of it, but then it's like I didn't think Conan, is he recently back in Marvel again?
He was in like within a year.
Really? Okay, because it's like, I thought he's just been kind of in the Dynamite section, which I always call Dynamite Comics. I love Dynamite Comics, but Dynamite Comics, they always make me feel like they're all like stories that are pretty much made for like my like grandpa. Like, that's how I sort of feel. Because like every character in Dynamite for the most part is like stuff from like the late 1800s to like early 19.
It was like
Lone Ranger,
Vampirella. Isn't
Princess of
Vampirella in
Mars.
there?
Yeah,
like
like-
Terry and the Pirates.
Yeah, the Princess of Mars, you know.
Man with No Name.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I love those books because to me it's like so cool. It's like, oh, you're gonna take these old stuff and like bring out more new versions of it, or take movies and make sequels that they never got, like Total Recall and whatnot. But like, that's always what Dynamite feels for. It's like literally like it feels like their target audience is dead.
You got to get it out now. The
It's
great
not,
generation's going.
it's not
We've
where,
got the
where
IP.
is your
What are we
target
gonna
audience?
do?
It's just like the target audience is literally not even here anymore.
We're not sure if we're going to put like this much TNA in one comic. People are starting to push back. Double down! Just fucking do it! Princess of Mars, get it the fuck out there! Ship's burning!
See, that's why you get to the end of the year and there's always like that sale that sometimes Dynamite will have on like Comixology. They're like $15, we'll give you 100 graphic novels, and you're like, oh geez, give me that. I don't care what it is. You get, it's like, oh yeah, you get Jungle Girl Omnibus, sure. Red Sonja 3-book collection, I'm there. Like, you know what I mean?
I disagree, or I don't disagree. I don't know why Disney put the kibosh on this. I feel like it really would have been successful. I think if this had come out in real time, because like, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they do some Hellboy animated movies like way before the movie came out?
Yeah,
they were kind of like this, and I feel like you could order them from the back of previews. So like, I think if this sort of like, not so much straight to video, but if this had sort of like a previews release where you could sort of get it from that back of the book. And sort of ordered it at a comic shop, I think this would have pleased everybody. Like the people who aren't maybe necessarily like the target audience for Gen 13 would be like, hey, this is not bad. And then the people who are the target audience for Gen 13 are going to be like, oh, they didn't pussify it. They kept the sharp edges around it and kind of kept it like, true to the spirit of the book. So like it's a I don't know. Every square in the 4 squares gets touched. I think it pleases everybody in the audience. I think this was such a missed opportunity. I think this, and when you compare it to the other stuff, it's just so much better than half the DC straight to video stuff.
Over the DC ones or like the Marvel ones?
Oh, either or. I gotta say, like, where do you guys stand on the DC straight to video stuff?
We like the majority of them.
I like them pretty highly, actually, to tell you the truth.
There's some that are kind of misses. Like for me, the last one we could cover, actually last episode, was Catwoman Hunted, and I was kind of very meh about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there are the ones that are really good, and there are the ones that are like, it was good, but it wasn't amazing, But I generally like a majority of the time. Yeah,
I'd say like a half and half. I think the ones that like, I think there are surprising ones that are like really great, and then other ones that are like, this feel like it fell a little off.
Gotham Knight kind of, or whatever.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. It's like I would say Gen 13's like, I would say that's kind of up there. I would say that's a top tier kind of animated film.
I agree.
And I think it's one. This is because they screwed the pooch already 20 plus years ago. And I get it. I mean, it's one of those ones. I feel it sounds weird. If this was a Warner Brothers animation, it would have been. They could have probably found it and put it out there. I mean, even though at this weird time, that would have been still weird, because this is when Warner Brothers was trying to kidify Batman even more. They're like, no, Batman the animated series, it's getting too dark and too serious. We you know what? We need a teenager in there. Kids don't want to watch a 45-year-old man run around. It's like, and a kid, you're like, what kids are you asking? Like, you know what I mean? Like, every kid would, like, generally kids don't want to watch it, like, kids run around. They actually like it, like, watching older characters. But, I feel if this would have kind of came out then, but since we already missed that point, this would actually be a really good re-release. Like, make a super special edition, 4K, steelbook, like, really own up to it and release it like a big movie, like, in a sense, and just kind of treat it like, hey, here's this lost film that we're bringing back. And I just feel alone. If you just say, hey, what's the story by? It's from Jim Lee. It's from the artwork of J. Scott Campbell. What's his name? The other guy, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Brandon Choi. And so it's like right there is already a super group of creators. And then you go, okay, so now it's an animation from DC Comics, but put together by Disney. It's like, how is that not like, how do you not want to see that once you hear all this stuff here?
Well, it's also one of those things, like, I'm kind of wondering, like, if they would release this, if it would have gone under like not even Disney, but like maybe like Australia doesn't give a shit. There are a bunch of savages out there. Give it to them.
Yeah, we saw Mad Max.
Exactly. Like 3 years away from that, where like maybe like they would like if it came to America, they'd put it under like Touchstone, New Line Cinema before that got New Line Cinema, Miramax or something. So something like that maybe. But at the same time, I can't help but wonder like Disney, like there's like maybe some young, ambitious like executive producer or something, and they're like, do what you want. Like, okay, he goes and does that, and then like Mickey like sticks his head up from a line of cocaine, like, what the fuck you make? What the fuck is this? Nobody loses this shit.
That's pretty much what happened. I feel like this was one of those ones that like it was made like out of the watchful eye. You know, it was made overseas, and nobody was really paying enough attention. They're just like, oh, cool. You know what? We had a lot of hits on our hands. You know, we had the X-Men series, we had Spider-Man, we had and even like those ones are all kind of like because even Spider-Man has that thing where they try to say that Spider-Man never throws a punch in the animated series, but I've actually seen the punches in there. If you look long enough, at some point he does, or he might do maybe an open-fisted kind of like push punch thing, and it's like oh, that's still a punch. But so like they would kind of do that, but I feel this thing must have just got kind of pushed over to the side and just no one was watching it. And then by the time it came out, it was like, oh geez, what'd you guys do? Like, I mean, we ain't HBO. This isn't, you can't put the Spawn TV, show up with this. And 'cause I think Hellboy was even like an HBO one or something like that.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean,
so, because and that's where this would have fit, because I kind of still wonder, like, because you would never be able to play this on, like, you wouldn't be able to put this on Cartoon Network. Adult Swim didn't exist yet, and it's too extreme for Adult Swim too. It's
maybe that's it. Maybe they just didn't have a place for distribution. Like it didn't have a natural fit. I'll say this though: last year over the summer, they did how they do those Fathom, like you go to like they'll
the movie theater?
They'll broadcast on the movie screen and you can go see it at the theater. So they did one of those for the Transformers movie.
Oh my gosh,
86.
The best movie.
It is. Oh my god, it was so fantastic. So I went and saw that, and because they also tied that with a steelbook, like a Blu-ray. Like I think it's the 25th anniversary. Jesus Christ! But actually seeing it, like it was like fully restored, like a beautiful transfer. Like because I feel like I've seen it over the years, but like it's a little. It hasn't aged particularly well. Oh, dude, some of the animation is super solid.
I love that movie all the way around.
Oh no, the soundtrack, everything.
Yes.
It's a oh gosh, no. So it was, but the transfer was beautiful. Like every, and also seeing it that big, you sort of like the planets getting destroyed. You're seeing like little people like just flying off into space. It's fan-fucking-tastic. So like, yes, there is a space to do that. Like I feel like they did a re-release. It was synced to the sort of like the DVD reissue. It was an anniversary. Like maybe there's some sort of weird mojo because like Marvel is now a Disney and Warner Brothers is sort of DC, and I guess WildStorm is sort of neither fish nor fowl, but more on the DC side. I don't know what the sort of like.
Well, I think WildStorm's totally bought by DC. Like I think they own everything to it.
So maybe they can't do something with it now because of
aside from Grifter. I don't think they've done anything with those characters. Maybe aside from Grifter.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the thing that was like I kind of hate to say it, but a lot of those like in a sense all those WildStorm and old Image comics they've sort of got kind of lost because I bet you if you went out in the street and tried to ask people if they knew any of these, nobody knows who these are. I hate to sort of say it, but it's like Gen 13 is kind of stuck into like the hardcore comic book fans are going to know what it is, but the average person has no idea what those characters probably are. So there is probably a little bit of a hard sell for it anymore because I don't think they've even done anything. They tried rebooting it a couple times, but then I think New 52 kind of came, and then they're like, what? Forget about it,
Also, don't you think it's a better fit with Marvel? Like, I feel like those characters mesh because they are sort of Marvel carbon copies.
Yeah.
They mesh in the Marvel universe a little more naturally, whereas I don't think they fully... like it makes sense why Midnighter and what's his name, Apollo, because they're sort of Superman and Batman, so it kind of makes sense why they had this sort of afterlife. Mm-hmm. And I guess Grifter pops up from time to time. I'm not every now. I feel like I see him every now and again.
Yeah.
Again, I think like a 52 or a crossover event, he'll be like in the panel in the background somewhere.
And I think like the rest of them appeared in some things too as well.
Well, yeah, I feel like she's the one. Like I feel like I think the only problem with her is they never gave her a good code name. Like I think she had like an iconic code name, like she'd be one of the characters people just sort of, because like she's visually listen to me, she's visually striking, you know what I mean, like she's tall and red hair and everything, and I thought that like the green and purple, like when she had the costume, when she finally gets the costume in the cartoon in the movie, I was like, oh, it's so nice to see. Like, it's a really great, you know, like it works. It's a design. It's a little nostalgic. It does sort of like, kind of like your 90s sweet tooth starts like aching.
Yeah. Well, and it's well, do you think that DC bought all the WildStorm and so on because they're like, hey, this will give us sort of an X-Men type thing for our lineup? I really have a feeling that that's what they were probably thinking in getting it, is that because there's so much X-Men popularity kind of from like the 80s into the 90s that like DC's kind of like, you know what, if we had a group of, you know, young hoodlums running around and so on, we got Teen Titans. Nobody wants the Teen Titans. We learned that already.
If we
it's not the 2000s yet.
Whether it sells or not, it's one more thing Marvel doesn't have.
Yeah, there's probably also that.
Well, not to like be inside baseball about it, but didn't Jim Lee Jim Lee went to DC, right? So he became he's an editor there, or
he runs DC.
One of the big guys.
He's one of the main guys running DC at the moment.
Yeah, so does he just sort of like, this is my, you know, this is what comes with me, you know, like, this is my extended family, so you have to bring, you know, if I come, they come with me. So do you think that?
Wasn't it like a bunch of Marvel guys and some DC guys gave the fuck you to Marvel and started Image, and then they all started trickling off and doing their own things, and Todd McFarlane's like, fuck you guys, I'm staying here.
Look at make action figures. You make a lot of money and make really creepy intros to the Spawn show.
I am Tom McFarlane. I'm just drawing inside my castle right now.
Well, I think a lot of those dudes, I think like mileage varied. I think a lot of those dudes, it turns out they needed the structure of a kind of like of a institution like Marvel that sort of like has
Rob Liefeld kind of.
They need
name names.
They need a father figure.
I just saw a documentary. I'm saying what the documentary told me. That's literally all I'm doing. I'm just being a
no, but I think that's totally, and it's not just him. I think a bunch of them, like they're really great. Look, I'm 2 years behind on my next issue, so I'm not gonna call anybody out for taking a little too long to put an issue out. But I also think that like one of the things that the sort of the big two, like they get it out on a monthly schedule, come hell or high water, and like people like, you know, like they come to the pest dispenser, they get the pellet, and they come back to the pest dispenser, they get the pellet, and that's how you sort of build an audience. And I think that's why Image sort of collapsed. Certain people were better at it. Obviously, Todd was able to make it go. I think Jim Lee was like he clearly was able to manage the business side of it. So I just think there were like kind of mixed results, and I think also it's really hard to like launch a new character group. Like it's just hard for people to like, they have to really sort of connect with them over a long period of time, and then new people have to come in as old people sort of wane out. And when you have like just this whole full universe that like has a lot of people but not a lot that are standouts, it was too diffused, and like a lot of like I think a lot of indie guys struggle on that.
Yeah, well, and it's probably it's like anything. There's always that thing. At the end of the day, people only have enough money per week for so many comics. It's just like video games or anything else. There's only so much, and I think that's kind of what it was. But then also, I guess if DC shows up and say, "Hey, Jim, we'll buy you out, give you some money, and you want to come draw some Batman for us?" That's kind of a hard one to say no to.
No, totally. And I think that like the ones that did live, you know, like Spawn is a good example. I think Hellboy. I think like if you think about like the Goon, like stuff where it's like one guy, or not one guy, it's one person, or not one person, but it's like a dedicated team of people, and they are like, it's their passion project, and they're just going to keep putting it out and keep putting it out and keep putting it out. Like that is like, I think that's what it takes. I just think that like the industry, like the economics of the industry are difficult. It's really hard to like, if you don't have a person who is just like ride or die for this character or this group, like you're going to lose the sort of momentum that is required to keep that going for a long time.
Well, because I think even it's like in Gen 13, it's like I think after about issue 20, all the main guys sort of jump ship. They're like, okay. And so Jason Scott Lee's like, well, I'm going to go do Danger Girl. See you guys. You know, and Jim Lee's like, I'm going to go work on, you know, maybe Wildcats or something else, you know, and continue that one further. And then it was kind of taken over by other people. And I feel, I kind of hate to say it, but that's probably, let's be honest, like the core reason everybody bought the first book and maybe continued on. And it's not saying, because once again, this movie tells you that it's very interesting, you know, core group of characters and all this kind of stuff, but it's that thing that like I think everybody saw Jim Lee on the cover, once again, J. Scott Campbell I want to say this was his sort of big break. I want to say in this first graphic novel, it sort of says that, he didn't really have anything else before this. Like, he sent some drawings to Jim Lee or something like that, and then Jim's like, here, we'll slap you on this book here, and maybe he had something, but from this point on, it just literally springboarded him to what he wanted to do, and, do some Charlie's Angels meets 007.
No, which is, I think, like, fair enough, but that's the thing is, I think for a book like that to sustain itself when the core team is gone, because, like, I think a lot of the audience goes with them, they either, like, usually it's the artist, sometimes it's the writer.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And also, like, I don't know, like, were they, when you took the initial premise away, were they, which felt kind of a little carbon copy-ish, were they strong enough characters to sort of stand on their own, their own two legs? And that might be, I think, ultimately what they, what they didn't have.
Does anybody know if this series had, like, a finite ending, or if it just kind of, like, fizzled out?
They dropped a nuclear bomb on him at one point just to get rid of everybody, and then Fairchild was the only one that survived, and then had to lead, then they tried a new little series for a bit where she led a new group, and then they brought it back that none of the other ones died from that nuclear bomb drop.
So they hid under the desks?
yeah, one of those things. So, like, there was that kind of stuff, but it's like, I think that, like, in a sense, other than maybe, I think there's that section in, like, the mid 2000s where they sort of try to bring it back, like a new soft reboot or whatever. But I want to say it lasted something like 70 something issues or something like that. So it's not really like a ton of stuff. I mean, it's still a pretty good run, but in a sense, I think it's one of those ones, like, once again with Image, I think you at first they thought, like, man, we got all this freedom, we're going to create all these different books, but then at the end of the day you kind of realize, there's only so much time in the day for so many books and so on, and how many of them do you want to keep running, and how many times do you have focus for? And I think Gen 13, because there's already a spin-off from one of the other Jim Lee ones, there's, like, it's the one that Fairchild's dad, like, when they talk about in the movie and whatnot, there's a book that he's, like, that's his main thing, is that team right there.
Is that Gen 12? I think I saw something about
that. Or it's not Gen 12. It's like something 7.
Oh, okay.
Wait.
Team 7.
Yeah.
So Team 7. So this is Gen 13 is technically a spinoff of that. So, and I think that's just what it is. It's just kind of there. And, and sometimes, like, some stories, too, there is something to be said about kind of knowing that, like, hey, you know what? My story is a good 12 issues long, maybe 24 issues.
Right.
And I pull the plug on it, and there's no more. Like, and it's said that the downfall is I think what happened is the 90s started to fade out, and I almost feel like Gen 13 kind of petered off as the 2000s came along. I think that's sort of what happened, is, like, it was almost maybe two 90s, as it kind of went on, and then by the time 2000 starts rolling around, the downfall is then they start getting to the time period where now you're competing with anime, and I feel that, like, trying to sell these young hip characters that are almost, like, 10 years too old by the time that, like, all these anime things are kind of coming out, I think that might have been kind of a tough sell maybe to, like, a certain age group.
It also might be something to the degree of, like, well, I mean, at this point, like, DC kept on having all these kind of, like, reboots of, like, well, not a bunch of reboots, but I guess like the second iteration of this came out around, you said, New 52 era, right?
It's like before New 52. So New 52 Flashpoint comes, and then they're like, what are we gonna do with Gen 13? Oh, kind of shelf it.
Something there, and that's even Jim Lee saying that maybe. But then on top of that, on top of that, though, you also, I think you probably could maybe do, like, maybe not like a long running series, maybe like a limited series reboot / maybe put the cap on it kind of thing, maybe, because I think there is enough people, like, now that might be nostalgic for it and kind of might want that taste of it again, but something new at the same time. So that's a possibility. I mean, I find myself looking for, I mean, not that I dislike I still like new Marvel. I just I'm way behind on whatever new Marvel stuff is. Just I'm more up to date on DC, but the Marvel I have been reading has been more 90s stuff, like Cable, or a little bit of Luke Cage, or I bought the big omnibus of, like, two big omnibuses of
Did you Chris Claremont, Jim Lee ones?
Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, yeah.
That's a fun run.
I'm working up to that one. I'm waiting. In May they're going to drop the Fall of the Mutants, and then after Fall of the Mutants, I think there's, like, the Inferno one, and then then finally I guess the first Jim Lee one. I can't wait. I read those in real time. I love them. I think when Jim Lee comes in, it's sort of like a new golden era. Like it's just so fucking good.
Yeah.
Even though I've never read any of that X-Men, what comes to mind when I think of X-Men is Jim Lee artwork from the 90s.
Yeah.
So even though I've never read any of that, I'm like, I should probably read that. And I saw the book for a good price. I'm like,
no, you're going to love it.
Yeah.
It's so fantastic.
It's a good one. I have that one. We'll have that whole X-Men collection digitally, but like, I love the living daylights out of all those ones and so on like that. You know, but you know what's actually, I just want to say this real quick. You know what would be actually an interesting like reboot of sort of Gen 13? And I just kind of thought about when I mentioned that anime thing is, what if it was given like, hopefully like not a wild card anime team, but like a solid anime team, and it was given like a 24 episode run, maybe even a 12 episode run, because like, a lot of animes nowadays are doing that. Gen 13, but done kind of very Japanese style. Like I feel like that
like a Titans Go, or not like a.
No,
more animated.
I want to say full, not the halfway one. Like literally give it to like a full-on anime team. Because that's the thing. Sometimes when they do those American kind of crossover ones, we were mentioning this earlier in the Catwoman Hunted one, is you get when it gets like that halfway point, it gets kind of weird because then it almost has that feeling of like maybe an American person trying to do anime or an anime person trying to do American cartoons, and then there's just this weird like, I don't know what it is. It feels like we're like a ship that's halfway between port of two different areas, and and not too sure which direction to go. I feel if you just gave it to like you just picked a real good prestigious kind of like Japanese director and his full team or her full team, and you just went yes. Just you guys do it. Like we're not going to interfere. You know what I mean? Here's the source material. Read up on it, and then kind of go with it. Like hopefully not like don't try to do your own take of it, but just try to take it and just put together something really neat. I feel like that could be kind of fun.
It just becomes My Hero Academia or some shit.
You never know.
When they're busted out of the compound and they're fighting the sort of like those big mechs.
Yeah.
I feel like they're already and like the weird like cylindrical like when
that's kind of a weird xenomorph kind of not kind of
no I think it fully would like because another thing Jim Lee like was so great at was like kind of pulling in that mech. Like I remember when mech started showing up in the X-Men and I was like, holy shit, they're really doing it.
Yeah, the way he does mechs a lot of times it has this weird kind of like it's not organic, but it has this weird curvy kind of organic type look to it,
Oh man, what was it? Was it Appleseed where that you started to? Oh god, I feel like where you have these sort of like big biomorphic forms. I guess that all goes back to Robotech. Right?
Yeah, I was say Robotech, Gundam. Yeah, well, Gundam, I always think that is like kind of. I mean, there's probably always something that predates that, but Gundam, the first show is like '77 or something like that.
Oh, holy shit! I didn't. Boy, that's your like 35-year anniversary.
Yeah. So yeah, you get it's one of those ones, so you kind of go way back there and so on. But I just think that the Gen 13 has a lot kind of going for it. As I said, like this movie right here really sold me even more than like, as I said, the comic books I thought were cool art books in a sense. Like they were fun flip throughs if anything was that, but like it didn't like suck me in as much as I kind of like was hoping it was. But when I watched this, it was like, I really liked it. I think the story's good. I even think even though it is like a bit of an X-Men knockoff, it still has like just that whole thing that they're all brought to this facility, and this facility is like, oh, we're going to show you your superpowers, but really what it is, we're just going to turn you into a human weapon and so on like that, and you're expendable. And it has this like thing like we don't really care at all about you whatsoever. Like I just kind of like that sort of like sense that they got going with it, and then of course they break free and go from there.
Well, I would say if you compare the two, like Gen 13 is slightly like a little more solid than Generation X. Which is not to slam it if anybody loves it, and I love that Chris Bacalou art. But I feel like that was a sort of like it never like the New Mutants made sense. They were sort of like the junior version of they were like they were the kids in school version of the X-Men, so the X-Men could go off and be adventurers. But like Generation X never fully kind of dug in and found their groove. Like the characters were nice and fun. Were they though? Half of them, yes. A solid half of them. Like I see people who like, because I know that like this was the comic you read when you were a kid, and so now you do fan art of like Chamber. I get it, but like most of those characters are just fully ridiculous and do not make a lick of sense.
Well, see, and I always wonder, is those like the kind of like series that comes from, you know, stuff like Gen 13 and these kind of comic books are made, and then like they do that thing like, whoa, you know what, we need our own thing, Generation X now.
No, you're probably right. It was probably like a direct copy.
Yeah.
But I feel like this, like it feels like it has its own like the way to do Generation X is to sort of steal the, you know, like these mutants are being kidnapped, they're being taken to a facility, and the government is trying to make them. So instead of it being Professor X or some benevolent or Emma Frost or whoever, it's the military. Like, we're going to get the mutants and we're going to use them to our end. You know, so you use the same formula for Gen 13, but then apply it to Generation X. This is the way they should have done it. Sorry you guys didn't get the memo back then. I'll build a time machine and try and get it to you.
Well, it's X-Men. They're like, we literally have the most 90s name of anything ever made. If we're not in on this group, you know, we're doing something wrong. But yeah, Gen 13, you can track it down on YouTube because there's always some good Samaritan out there who's going to upload that for us and keep the spirit alive. I bet you also, if you go to a Comic-Con and you want a physical copy, that might not be a bad place to find it. I haven't seen this one.
Too.
Yeah, well, they're like such bootleg versions that they're not selling for that much. It's not like gonna be like getting the official Australian VHS version that won't play on your dirty American like VCR. You're gonna need like God, I can't remember what region Australia is. I don't think it's the same as England. I think it has its own region.
But on your VCR, just a kangaroo flipping the bird.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't work. You have to rewind it the other direction. That's the worst part is when I hit play on it, it worked, but it played backwards. But no, I think this thing is really cool for anybody who just likes, you know, classic superhero cartoons. If you want a classic superhero cartoons, it's actually more ballsy than many of the other like rated R ones that we get. Like, it's like you think some of these Batman ones that are rated R are ballsy. I mean, I think they're just ballsy for watching them stack up, and then you see Batman do certain things, or you see like certain movies where it's like, you're like, oh, okay, wow, we've gone this far. But this thing right here, it's like, it's 1998 and it's already doing super ballsy thing. I mean, you got a teenager smoking in a cartoon, like,
that's and that shower scene, by the way, they have the full Starship Trooper shower scene. You know. Although through a very foggy mist. Yeah, very foggy and foggy VHS filter and foggy 320p YouTube filter. So there's multiple fog levels there. But yeah, it's just got. I mean, and then there's a part too where like Mark Hamill makes that one, like the helicopter pilot, his head explodes and brains and guts and everything go all over the windshield, and it's just like, oh, that was the part where I was like, no, this is rated R. Like before, I was kind of, I'm like hard PG-13, very hard PG-13. I saw that, I'm like, that would have been the part that would have put it right into an R category. I would say actually the first 5 minutes. You know,
well, that's
like,
true.
You are on notice, and so like if you're interested, watch that first 5 minutes, and the first five minutes pull you in. Then you're buckle up. Yeah, buckle up, Buttercup. Because
it sucks you in. I mean, that's the thing is, I watched this and I was like, I thought I was gonna probably enjoy it. I'm like, this will be a fun romp. And
right.
That was what I was thinking.
A nostalgia piece.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, I actually am more impressed. And I think it's also just. When you think about it, like historically, this movie's it's ballsy. It's literally the most ballsy thing I bet you Disney's ever kind of like. I mean, there's probably something else out there, you know. But I mean, like they literally have the Disney logo. It's not Pulp Fiction that's hiding it with a Miramax logo and many other things. No. Or Jay and Silent Bob, Strike Back, where it technically is a Disney movie if you really think hard enough. No. This is full on. The first thing you see is the Disney logo. Goes into opening credits. Parents shot brutally. Kids screaming, military takes the kids away. Like, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is one of those ones where it's like, you're just in. It's like that scene right there is like, are you in or are you out?
No, I thought the movie, I didn't really know what to expect, and I found it really enjoyable. Like, I wasn't blown away by it, but I was never bored, and I found myself into it the whole time. And the characters, like you said, Jack, the characters were very solid. You didn't really question who everyone was. It was a really, I came in kind of like, I liked it, wasn't blown away. But the more I think about it, I thought it was actually pretty good. It's not my top DC movie, but I still thought it was good.
I gotta say, I hate everything, and the thing that you, when you hate everything, the thing you watch for on sort of like outward facing, like if you're gonna be on Twitter, like I don't go to Twitter and talk shit about stuff, and I try not to, like, you know, on podcasts or anything. if you're not gonna say something nice, why bother? You know.
Mhm.
But I also like, oh my god, I hate everything. And so like I went into it kind of fully thinking like, oh, it didn't get released. Like that's probably like that's a red flag. And then I'm also sort of not like I read the like Monkey Man and O'Brien crossover, so I was a little familiar with Gen 13, but not like a deep stand. So I went in like kind of like, hey, just get through it. You know, when I get through it and find 5 or 6 nice things to say about it. And I halfway through was like, oh no, I'm enjoying this. And then like I said, when they did the reveal, and I was like, oh, her brother. That's him.
Mark Hamill?
I was like,
yeah. There was even a Star Wars reference earlier on.
I was like, holy shit, they got me. They totally wrote me in. I totally came away liking it a lot better. Although I did take a little mid, like I paused it in the middle, and that was when I went to the Wikipedia just to sort of like, what? Because I was like, that Disney thing is bullshit. This can't be. Because it was when she was taking the smoke break, and it was like, no fucking way.
Yeah,
it just does not like. And so that was when I sort of read about it, and then I saw that it was the guy that did Mask of the Phantasm, and I was like, oh. So then like you put on a different sort of hat to assess it. You're like, this isn't a slipshot operation. These are people who are actually really good at like, because again, Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah, amazing.
Perfect.
Yeah, like a perfect.
So
film.
like these are people who have cracked the code on how to make a good animated movie. Yeah, no, totally enjoyed it. Totally I recommend it. In fact, I'm with you, Spence. I think it needs a more dignified release.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I know that it's probably, at least at the moment, it's going to be just because of you have too many major companies involved in this, because it's like, it's one of those. You got the two titans right now. It's like it's a mixed match of like Warner Brothers and Disney, like in a sense, probably holding on to this thing's properties from each end. But if that could,
mouse.
yeah, literally a rabbit and a mouse just being like not giving up any side. But it's one of those ones like this would be just. I mean, like speaking of heavy metal, we mentioned earlier, they got the 4K Steelbook Blu-ray edition of it coming out like in like a month or something like that. That's what this movie needs. This movie needs one of those really cool special edition, like with those kind of prestigious movie. It needs like the Criterion Collection release. I don't think it's gonna get that. I want like the one where it's like for some reason it's gonna be like $100. I don't know, but I'm gonna get something cool out of it.
Mark Hamill comes in for like a special interview on it, and just like, oh, we're talking about Gen 13? I thought I was talking about being the Joker for the 800th time. Oh, I don't even... Shit, I forgot I did this.
Yeah, one of those ones. But no, it's worth checking out. I think it's one of those ones. If anybody's like just a DC fan or any of that kind of section or whatnot, I think this thing just needs to go on that list right away. It's like, I think should be like one of those ones. Like, drop what else you're probably doing and go watch this one, because this is enjoyable and fun if you haven't seen it. But
run, don't walk.
Yeah, exactly. If you're at Bubba Gump's and you need to flip that sign over, you put the Run Forest Run sign. You don't do like the Stop Forest Stop one. But yeah, other than all that good fun stuff, Jack, I know you already mentioned off the bat, you're like right off the bat, you're like, advertisement, let's get it out of the way. We'll send them to the right location. Because you know what, they might not listen all the way through, but I bet you they'll listen to the first 5 minutes.
At The Villainist on Twitter, at Reckless Eyeballs on Instagram. Why not make them the same? It seems like it would be easier to find you. Yeah, it probably would. Or just go to guncomic.com. I do a comic called Gun about bad guys. If you haven't read it, there's you know what? If you haven't read it, or you don't, or you're just like, hey, this guy has a great take on comic, or you know what? Fuck this guy. Who cares? Just ping me on Twitter or Instagram or any of the places that I named. Ask me, I'll send you a free copy of the first issue. The first one's free if you like it. I'm so sure you'll like it. If Ryan,
you're so sure you like it.
I'm still here.
How dare
still
you,
here.
sir?
I just thought it totally like, oh, we're out. Okay, bye. No, my camera was totally slowing everything else down. So I just like, yeah, I'm still here.
And then
I'm like one of those audio only things in Evangelion.
Next issue is going to be out soon. As you know, I'm sure every independent comic, we have inventory woes. So all the next arc, Slaughter Ball, All my inventory is sold out, so I have to do a reprint. So when the next issue comes out, we're going to do a reprint with new covers, and that should be coming out. I keep saying like a month away, but then it ends up not being. So I'm not going to say. I'll say it's before the end of the year, and look for it because I think it's going to be really. The new issue is going to be really fantastic.
I'm looking forward to it. I know that month away thing. I've been saying that with Pizza Boys issue 13.
Oh my fucking god! Yeah.
So it's still just been almost like a yearly process, but at least I got a 140-page script. It's okay. I'm like halfway through the first issue though, so I'm making progress. It's just been slow progress.
Well, I finally hit the I fill in the pages as I'm sort of doing them, and I did the you never really peek ahead, never tell me the odds, and I saw that I only have 4 pages left to do, and something happened to me, because I've been working on this for through the whole pandemic, and it's just sort of people do not understand, it's not like I'm a sloppy, I work 6 to sometimes 7 days a week. It is relentless, and how could you do it this much and be so slow? And I don't know, but I feel you just want to make the best thing that you can. Yep. But when I saw that 4 pages away, I was like, oh my god, I don't know who I don't know who I'll be if I'm not working on issue 7. I feel like that's been my identity through a very destabilizing time in the world.
It's like at some point I'll get my kung fu adventure story that's probably going to seem way out of left field, but I just want to do it anyway. Screw it, it's my book. I do what I want.
Exactly, because that's the other thing is once I wrap up the storyline, I'm free to maybe take just do something in between, so it's I just get through it. But also the thing I think you also understand is the very minute you finish an issue, you are already behind schedule on the next one. You're already late on delivering the one that follows.
Yeah. So always just one of those ones, I don't know. But that's why everybody else has assistants that are uncredited. That's what I was thinking about in every comic book. I always go, there's always probably an assistant to every single one of these guys here and gals that's uncredited. I mean, maybe
and if they want to come over to the dark side,
yeah,
hey, look, we will work you harder and pay you less. So...
Yeah. But there's an N64 you can
you'll
play.
Have a credit.
So.
You'll have a credit. It'll be right there.
Yeah, I'll give you a credit though. I mean, I'm not picky about that. But yeah. And then other than that, go to oldmanorange.com where you can find Pizza Boys comics, all our old podcasts, other animations, all that fun stuff. But till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I'm Ryan Dunnigan.
And I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I really think we should all just have one name and just refer to that the whole time. Because I love the idea of somebody brand new coming in being like, these guys are all 3 named Spencer Scott Holmes.
Just run with it. Now we know if they did their research, they listened to an episode beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, but every episode somebody's first.
Exactly.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on. This was a blast, and love the podcast, love the comic, and huge fan. So thank you so much for including me.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We wanted to get you on for a while, so love to get you on again too.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what?
We're gonna do more. We're gonna definitely do more.
When I finally get that issue out, I will make it part of the tour.
Oh,
I'll make it a stop on the tour.
More than welcome here.
Tour de farce.